What we're seeing now is those values and those norms that are part of an American tradition are out the window.
As U.S. federal judges halt family deportations, we speak to a U.S. lawmaker whose district spans nearly 500 kilometers along the U.S. Mexico border. Hello, I'm Anand Naidoo, and this is The Heat. Raul Grijalva has been a member of Congress for more than 15 years. The Democrat from Arizona represents a diverse and geographically large district that spans the U.S. Mexico border. I recently sat down with the congressman in his office on Capitol Hill. We talked immigration. I started by asking him about his recent visit to a shelter housing immigrant children.
There's a shelter in Tucson, Arizona, run by Southwest Keys, a nonprofit that is receiving in total about $458 million to house and work with these children. The kids there were from 4 years old till about 11 or so, 79 of them. And somebody asked me, what was it like? And I said, well, it wasn't, pure hell in there, but it wasn't Shangri-La either. I mean, these kids are there involuntarily. They don't know where their parents are. And for the little ones, the trauma can be very severe. I think that the feeling I left with was sadness. Sadness that it's happening in this country of ours, and sadness that we still can't unravel and unify these kids with their parents, primarily their moms. And I think that brings a certain amount of, you wonder why. And I think that's been the whole immigration issue, a whole series of what ifs. What if we would have done this? What if we would have done this? And then every time we get in this close to the season of an election, it morphs into a total political issue. It becomes the red meat in campaigns, and we're seeing that. And unfortunately, child separation and separation of families was exactly that. I think that was more of a political agenda than it had anything with asylum or anything to do with immigration.
So is there a process here? Are these children waiting for something to happen when they could be reunited with their parents?
Exactly. It's the combination. I think what happened in the chaotic way in which this zero tolerance policy was put in place overnight, and that the separations occurred immediately at the border, even when legitimate requests for asylum and to be able to present their cases of credible fear, they were still separated. I don't think this administration understands the difference between an asylum seeker and an issue of dealing with an unauthorized entry around the issue of immigration. But having said that, what happened is now they're trying to push this puzzle back together again. The record keeping has been shallow, in some cases non-existent. Kids are waiting a month and a half, 2 months for the first glimmer of unification with their moms. And like it was announced today, that out of 101 kids under 4 years old, only 56 so far. They've already missed the deadline that was given to this administration by the courts. So it was a mess to begin with, a political knee-jerk reaction, and none of the work and none of the preparation was done. And so now we find ourselves with inability to quickly and expeditiously match the mom with the child.
Right, as you point out, it's a zero-tolerance policy. There have also been accusations that this is cruel in the extreme. It is inhumane.
Here we have I'm first-generation American and learned the values of this country in a very profound way because it meant a lot to my family, and it's provided myself and my family with some opportunities that I probably would not have had anywhere else. And so there's a deep sense of that for this country and a deep obligation. But what we're seeing now is those values and those norms that are part of an American tradition are out the window. And so the issue of cruelty, the issue of inhumane practices, the issue of using children as a hostage in a political discussion, and trying to get a political advantage to build a wall or whatever fantasy is going on in the man's head. The fact remains that our reputation as a beacon, our reputation as the safe harbor, our reputation to the rule of law is tainted, and I hope not irreparably, because we can come out of this, but it's going to take the better angels to get us out of this, and understanding that for us, it's not just about these kids in this situation. It is about our norms and about breaking from our traditions, and I think that's the sadness of it all.
What about the role, very controversial role, played by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, more commonly known as ICE? They've been severely criticized to the point where some are now calling for them to be dismantled.
Yeah, I think that debate's going to continue to roil across this country. When they consolidated all this power in one agency, ICE, when it used to be different customs would do customs, and basically the port of entry, Border Patrol would do the enforcement on the border. Task forces dealing with human trafficking and drug trafficking did their part. And it was the consolidation after 9/11 made this super agency, Homeland Security, and then ICE, the largest law enforcement agency in the country. But the maturation process hasn't occurred. It's not a mature agency. And so now it's been weaponized by Trump. It's become a detention machine. They're in charge of all the detention. And the reaction is happening to that reality from the public. I think that it's way past the point. We need to audit the money. We need to vet the process. We need to look at changing this whole structure of enforcement, immigration enforcement in particular, but Homeland Security in total. And that involves ICE, and that involves some fundamental changes and eliminating some of the responsibilities and assignments they have now and giving them to the appropriate other agencies to do. It's about breaking up this conglomeration of power that conveniently gets used at the direction of the President of the United States. That to me is scary. Enforcement on the border is not going to go away. That's part and parcel of security. But the way it's being done now and the way this agency has been politicized and the way its credibility is now in question, it's time to deal with ICE. And Congress should provide the oversight, but we don't.
What about a longer-term solution to what we're seeing right now, a comprehensive overhaul of this country's immigration laws?
I've been here a while, and every year the priority is comprehensive immigration reform, coupled, I think, with something that we need to talk about more extensively, is the kind of economic development support that we give to Latin America and other third world countries, Central America in particular now, and others, Caribbean nations and other third world nations. In doing so, to build up the ability of people to sustain themselves in their countries of origin. You know, the people coming here are economic refugees, political refugees in many cases, feeling persecution and feeling and fleeing what is an imminent danger to them and their families. And the economic refugees that want to feed their families. So I think we can do immigration reform, but not have to revisit it in 10 years because something went wrong. We can do immigration reform coupled with a really important and comprehensive approach to helping the rest of the world with healthcare, economic development, and education. I think we do that, the stress and demand for this economic sanctuary, which is the United States, begins to lessen.
There have been some short-term solutions which have been proposed by the president, one of which is to build a wall on the southern border. Now, your district actually has a very long
300 plus.
300 miles.
And I've got about 80, 90% of that. And it's a fantasy. It is not a deterrent. It is not an intervention. It's political symbolism, pure and simple. Mexico's not going to pay for it. The American people are going to pay for it at $25 billion. and if it ever comes to pass. And though he hasn't been able to get it done yet. I think that it's such a simplistic way to look at how we deal with the stress on our border and in the borderlands. It's such a simplistic way in which we deal with our relationships with our neighbors, and Latin America in particular. And unfortunately, that simplistic idea catches. Oh, build a wall and we're safe. That historically has never proven to be the case, and nor will it be the case here. It's not a question of safety and security, or keeping them out. It is that the push and pull from this nation of ours, if nothing else changes, will continue. I don't care how high your wall is. What has to change is that if we're going to do security, let's do it smart. Let's concentrate where the real problem and violence is, and building a wall at $25 billion off the taxpayers won't solve anything, and just becomes a symbol of our isolationist and nativist way to look at the world.